Calling Deadpool and the Wolverine the MCU savior was always a heavy burden to put on just one movie, even with the lead of the film repeatedly referring to himself as Marvel Jesus. The idea that one film could carry on its back the weight of the biggest franchise in the world was always asking too much, especially given that Deadpool and the Wolverine, the first R-rated Marvel Studios production, it really isn't even an MCU movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But let me explain, as spoiler-free as I'm able. The movie, for the most part, doesn't take place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what they refer to as the Sacred Timeline. You get an opening scene of Deadpool meeting with Happy Hogan in Stark Tower to kind of interview for the Avengers, but that's really about it. No major established MCU characters have a sizable role in the movie. There are 2 blink and you'll miss some cameos from 2 Avengers, but they collectively add up to about only 3 seconds of screen time, and that's not an exaggeration. The only main connection it shares with the MCU is in the utilization of the TVA, which took center stage in the Loki television series on Disney+, and has never featured in any other films. It is an agency that exists more as connective tissues between various adaptations across multiple studios, narratively speaking what they call multiverses. So in Deadpool and the Wolverine, you don't really get any of the history of the MCU, you don't even have any of the narrative taking place within the physical MCU, and you don't have any major established characters from the MCU. So what is this? Though pitched as the introduction of Deadpool to the wider universe, this would probably be best described as the last gasp and swan song of the old Fox X-Men series. In fact, the entire movie sort of feels like this extended eulogy for 20th Century Fox as a whole, which was purchased by Disney back in late 2017. It even included a memorial video over the credits as well as a destroyed logo in this sort of Mad Max-esque wasteland. Most of the characters that do appear, both the main ones and the cameos, they're all from like Deadpool movies, X-Men films, or other superhero properties that were owned by Fox. I'm not going to get into exactly who shows up because the surprise, it really is worth it. But almost all of them are Fox old properties, not Marvel Studios characters. For that reason, the endless barrage of cameos, it actually works significantly better than something like Multiverse of Madness, which just had this odd hodgepodge of familiar faces. Here the appearances, they feel a bit more organic, as a large portion of the movie takes place in a universe junkyard from Loki Season 1, Episode 5, as helpfully pointed out by Deadpool himself. It's in retrospectively making fun of this material that Deadpool 3 is at its best, paying tribute to franchises and film series long dead, or making fun of stuff that holds little nostalgia. It is about 10% respectful, 85% taking pot shots, and 5% playing with ideas that never saw the light of day due to pre-production shenanigans. It's fast and funny, and everything we want out of a Deadpool movie. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the first 2 movies were something like high cinema or anything. They are pretty generic, played-out story types of a revenge flick for the first film or a Terminator ripoff for the second. They got by on snappy action scenes, juvenile bloody comedy, and Ryan Reynolds' infectious charisma. Make no mistake, despite sharing a title, this is still very much a Deadpool movie, and Ryan Reynolds still kills it as the Mark with the mouth. But let's talk about that title, Deadpool and the Wolverine. This is not some great joining of Deadpool with some big name within the MCU, but rather the biggest name of a franchise he was already part of back at Fox. Wolverine has been cleverly reinvented here so as not to undermine the ending of Logan. That still doesn't stop Deadpool from literally digging him up and dancing on his grave. The use of the multiverse allows Disney to bring back Hugh Jackman for a fresh yet familiar take on the character, one who in some ways is just as bitter and haunted, but also grumpier and more comedic. It is a welcome blend of the familiar and new, as Jackman gets to stretch his comedic chops without losing a bedrock of standard issue superhero origin trauma. Not that I'm concerned with dramatic heft to begin with. The plot can feel as straightforward as its predecessors, maybe even more so, with shoehorned in concepts like an anchor character that keeps all universes together. This was likely a meta joke about how single characters can carry the weight of an entire franchise, but it also felt like a clunky device to push the story into existence. The plot, it's pretty straightforward. Deadpool needs to find a new Wolverine to keep his world from collapsing, but ends up trapped with the so-called worst Wolverine in this post-apocalyptic void where he must return before the TVA destroys his home. See, simple. Some may see this simplicity as a bad thing, and some may see it as a solid setup for a wider series of gags. I land somewhere in the middle on it. My issue is less with the narrative backbone of an action comedy and more with length. This threequel runs far longer than the first 2. And most action comedies like to stick to that rule of leave them laughing. For the most part, the film is consistently funny, even as fatigue sets in for that third act. The movie is unrelenting with an endless storm of legitimately funny sex jokes, bloody humor, and crotch shots with Wolverine claws. These are the elements fans have come to expect from this series, and it delivers. The movie doesn't pull its punches either, making fourth wall breaking cracks at both the MCU, the old Foxman series, and wider Marvel properties. But with this comes a few modern MCU issues, a bland visual style and an overuse of CGI environments that makes everything feel a little too cartoonish and intangible. A story too dedicated at times to the universe to the detriment of individual characters within the franchise. Most of Deadpool's supporting cast is left at home within the first few minutes. And then you've got a main villain who is well acted, but again, underwritten. Cassandra Nova is spooky enough, but given little to do beyond being this unstoppable force. Paradox, fortunately, he does fare better as he's played by Succession's Matthew Macfadyen. He's this smarmy clock puncher just looking to get ahead in his corporate world. This is a weird movie, expectedly so. It's a resurrection of a zombie franchise set loose in a literal junkyard of properties. It gives it the freedom to include old faces, while not really delving too much into the mainstays of the Marvel Studio franchises. In some ways, it makes it feel more isolated from the MCU and free to play into the nostalgia of the X-Men. It's also sort of this weirdly grim warning to the current state of Marvel Studios. No franchise lasts forever. No studio will exist to the end of time. No subgenre will forever be popular. All franchises in pop culture are someday doomed to be relegated to that junkyard of forgetfulness between dimensions. Unless, you subscribe to Journey Through Cinema for historical film flashbacks, of course. So, tippity tap that subscribe button thingy. Fox's X-Men, they've had their time, but in Deadpool and Wolverine, it finds some new life as part of this multiverse phase, and I'm happy for it. As one character in the film says, we get to have an end to our story. And if Marvel can make their multiverse saga about that, they may have something here. Even No Way Home was at its best when tying up loose ends, like Garfield's Spider-Man redeeming himself. But if the MCU is truly to stand the test of time, it will have to find a sense of consistency in character and narrative drive. That's something that all the dick jokes and cameos can't buy. It's a secret recipe that even Marvel is now struggling to recreate as we inevitably move closer to what I expect to be a Avengers vs. X-Men movie. But we'll have to see. For now, though, Deadpool and Wolverine represents a positive swing in the right direction for Marvel Studios. Perhaps not so much the MCU savior that people were hoping for, than a satisfying last ride for the old X-Men saga. But after a rough last year, I'll take a victory where I can get it, and hope the upward trajectory continues and that they can learn the right lessons from this movie and not the wrong ones. Deadpool is a special character, completely unique to anyone else. More is sometimes more with him, more to laugh at and more to poke fun at. The same can't be said for everything, but here it all kinda just clicks in a satisfying way. Those are just my thoughts on the new Deadpool 3 or Deadpool and Wolverine. If you like this video, please let me know with that like and subscribe button down below. Otherwise, keep those reels turning. Thank you.